All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Forget Perfect Leadership Series. And I'm so excited for our special guest today, Sonnie Linebarger. Sonnie is the CEO of Cadre Hospice. And Sonnie and I met in a non professional setting, right? We met with Bold and a women's leadership group and a retreat, and just through similar female friendships. And so it's been awesome just to see you in this role and see you grow. But welcome. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. I am excited as well. I love what you are doing. I love the different directions you're going and that you are just taking the world by storm. And so I'm honored to be a part of it.
Oh, well, I'm excited. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your leadership journey.
Yeah. I won't give you the whole, 5,000 years of it,
Yeah.
but about 20-ish years ago, I moved into the healthcare space, very young, very bottom rung of the ladder. I was a nursing assistant and really hungry. That was my kind of entree into healthcare. I ended up becoming a nurse. Felt like I was a really, really good nurse, but there was still this desire, something wanting more. And I had some incredible leaders who tapped me kind of unknowingly and started having me help them with different tasks and really kind of grooming me unknowingly to be able to take over their role.
Yeah.
So I got into clinical leadership and what I found really fascinating was from the non-leader position, I thought, oh, I don't know that I ever want something like that. Like I see how stressed my leaders are.
Right.
I don't know that I want that avenue. And until I got handed the baton. And it really felt like a kind of a combination of a sense of responsibility, but also like jumping headfirst into the great unknown. And
Yeah.
so I navigated clinical leadership for a number of years. And then I got really, really interested in how the rest of the business worked. And so I was like, I think I want to dip my toe into operations.
Yeah.
Did that, learned a little bit more about the business, and just was like hungry. Interestingly enough, I was hungry for the very next role every single time, though. And
Yeah.
so, I think we'll probably get more into
Yeah.
this, but it was that piece that I really didn't have a good understanding of leadership quite yet, but I
Mhm.
loved the status. I loved that piece where I was hungry and I could get to the next role. Eventually was a COO of a really large organization and learned so much there. And then moved into my very first CEO role here about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of how you lead, and I'm going to go a little off script and stay on script, what are your top values for how you lead and how you show up as a CEO, but also as a human?
Yeah. Because of the experience that I've had navigating the last 20, 25
Yeah.
years, I value different things today than I did early on. And so for me today, integrity, 10 toes down on doing the right thing,
Yeah.
that is the most important thing for me. Because I think if you do that, you can navigate just about anything. If
Yeah.
you go and outside of or incongruently around integrity, there are a lot of other potholes waiting for you. And so I think
Yeah.
integrity is the number one piece. But I also think having a high EQ or a sense of being open and vulnerable is very, very important. I didn't feel that way early on.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to keep all the mistakes, kind of hidden, which,
Mhm.
goes a lot to the topic of this is that external optics of
Right.
perfection that will slowly eat away at you, which is
Right.
why then I had a lot of hiccups in between. But vulnerability to me today looks like, really leading by way of example and feeling okay and comfortable to share where I stepped in potholes along the way,
Right.
and allowing people to step in their own potholes as well. And then I think, as creating an environment of trust. So I think trust is not something that is easily captured. And I
Right.
think it takes a lot of work. But I would say those three are really how I try to lead on a day-to-day basis, personally, professionally. The two are very intertwined.
Yeah. Healthcare is one of the most kind of emotionally and I feel like operationally demanding areas, and especially hospice. And just the pressure and timeline and urgency, and how do you manage that yourself, and then how do you guide your team?
Yeah. So much of it probably was instilled in me very early on. You typically don't see a CEO today in my industry who has provided bedside care. Usually
Right.
it's someone that has a strong, strength in business,
Right.
operations. I really lead today with the foundation of how I started my career.
Yeah.
And so when you think about hospice and you think of end of life care, I go back to those moments and all of those lessons that I learned and why I really got drawn into healthcare in the first place, specifically end of life care. And so I lead a lot today based on those things that happened very early on. And I think that's a very unique way to lead as a CEO of a hospice company. But I also think that it serves not only our patients, it serves our team members because there's a sense of respect that's in the air for all of the different roles that we have. And so having that
Yeah.
helps me look at kind of the world of business two ways. One of which is going back to values, like, are we doing the right thing? Are we
Right.
being patient first? Because that's really why we do what we do. And every decision that I make has to support that. And if it doesn't, it's probably not the right decision.
Yeah.
And so I encourage my team members. We have a relatively intimate kind of senior executive leadership team, and we lock arms and we lean in and we talk through situations, but they have the space to do that as well. I'm typically not someone who will say, no, you can't do that. What they will often hear me say is, okay, I'm not going to say no, but I'm going to say, I need you to make sure that you own this decision.
Yeah.
And they kind of sit with that and they come to their conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, yeah, that's effective leadership. So in terms of leadership, I feel like there are a million ways that it is defined. How do you define leadership?
Hmm. I think taking all of your lived experiences that you've had and applying those through the lens of what did you learn? Because I think from a perfectionist point of view, we have no matter what, life gives us lessons.
Yeah.
We don't always put those in a position where they're externally facing. They're usually kind of like, okay, I don't want anyone to know about when I've had a situation where there was a hard lesson that came out of it. And so I try to live that like very forward facing. People know about my experiences. People know where I've screwed up because I share that
Right.
very, very openly. I want people to understand that leadership is not status, it's not title, it's not that very next promotion that you're looking for. Those are a lot of the mistakes that I made early on. And it wasn't until I came to a place where I thought, I cannot do much by myself.
Yeah.
I can lead from an ivory tower if I want. The outcome isn't always going to be very good because I'm not equipping and empowering others around me. And so my leadership, I try to live it out in every way of showing up as authentic as I can,
Right.
sharing vulnerably around the things that I have, the mistakes that I've made, or the lessons that I've had in life, and then trying to have a really good sort of communication. I think when you incorporate feedback and honest, open communication, you give people the opportunity to grow and empower them. Whereas sometimes if you want to lead from that ivory tower perspective,
Yeah.
you want to tell everybody what to do.
Right. Right. And that is perfectionistic, which
Right.
we get to. Um, so I feel like obviously the workplace has evolved. Everything is moving much faster than it used to. What do you think are some of the most important leadership skills today?
Yeah, I would say hands down communication. I mean
Yeah.
that almost has to be number one. Maybe a hard second is being able to create an environment of trust.
Yeah.
But communication, you have to be able to communicate with people effectively, efficiently, and clearly.
Right.
We all hear clear is kind, and that applies to so many different things. But communication is not just how we communicate. It
Right.
is meeting people where they are and understanding, asking the question of like, hey, how do you best communicate? Because if I best communicate by way of email, and so I'm constantly blasting emails, and other people have different ways of communication as their primary source of communication, we're going to have overlap or we're going to have misses. And so if I can best understand how someone wants to be communicated with, then I can figure out how to kind of meet with them where they are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really, really important, but also getting clear. Communication has to be clear.
Right.
When I first wanted to do speaking, which used to terrify me, I would write on every mirror in the house, I am a clear and compelling speaker. Because that
Yeah.
was really, I felt like every time words came out, they got jumbled. And so that was like what I really wanted to be able to grab a hold of and embody was clear and compelling speech. That doesn't mean just on a stage. That means when I'm sitting down and having a conversation with you about your growth path. That means when I'm having a really hard conversation with you. And so
Yeah.
being able to have the communication tool and be good at it is hands down the number one, but also being able to have built the foundation of trust with your team. If you have
Yeah.
those two things, you can accomplish just about anything. When
Yeah.
you've got the trust and you clearly communicate, people will often go to the ends of the earth for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a big believer, especially just in the work that I see in the organizations and the variety and that I get to of organizations and how they're structured. I think communication is one of the easiest ways to build trust, but also lose trust.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
so I see so many organizations not be intentional with communication, not be intentional in like the hierarchy of communication and the urgency around communication. And in my past corporate life, I was in charge of internal communication. And I think it is one of the most important things within the workplace. Um,
absolutely. For example, I think often leaders don't feel like they should send out informal communication. Like everything feels like, oh, this should
right.
really be a formal sort of communication as we're sending like widespread, maybe
Yeah.
company-wide emails out or communication of some sort over the weekend. And this is congruent with what I just shared. Over the weekend, I just got this overwhelming sense of our people do really hard work.
Yeah.
All of our people. Uh,
Yeah.
People encompass every role we have within our company, whether it's billing or whether it's patient facing.
Yeah.
Our work is heavy. We
Mhm.
take care of people at the end of their life. That's when they're at work, which is oftentimes more hours we're spending at work than we
Yeah.
are at home. Then we go home and we turn on the news and we see the heaviness of the world.
Right.
We get on our phone and we scroll, and there's the heaviness of what the world is blasting out there for us to see.
Right.
And I just felt like there was just something on my heart that was like, you need to send this out to everybody and say, hey guys, number one, I see you. I see you and I see the weight of what you carry every single day at work. But dang it, the world is dark and I don't want you to get
Right.
lost in that. And so I need you to remember that you are part of the light in this world. And it was just off the cuff, sitting in my living room, like I just felt compelled to do this. And it's fascinating when you put that out there and people feel heard and they feel seen and in a moment when they really needed to hear something like that, we have to pay attention to why we get these kind of gut instincts.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think, communication and building trust is important. And then, one of the things that I've been observing a lot lately is just effective decision making. I think is a really, really important leadership skill and one that is overlooked. And again, can build or erode trust very easily. And so I think that's been something as I've been looking at how to build leadership skills for leaders, one that I think we think kind of comes naturally, but especially when stakes are high and we're wanting to also collaborate. And I think it's one of the areas too that's an important kind of focus opportunity and skill for leaders.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's interesting. That was something for the last, since I stepped into this role,
Yeah.
has been top of mind of wanting to get better at it. I want to
Yep.
hone my ability to
Yep.
be decisive, execute on decisions confidently, which you can do most of the time. Sometimes you have to execute on a
Yep.
decision without the utmost of confidence. But I think that led from really early on, someone questioned my ability to be decisive.
Yeah.
It's one of those things we as women, we put these things in that backpack with all the junk that we store in our mind, and it will come out and manifest in some way. And so as I was stepping into this role, I thought, for whatever reason, it kind of came back out. And it was
Right.
like, hey, hey, Sunny, how is your decision making?
Right.
How is decisive? And I just thought, oh my gosh, I doubled down and really, really worked over the last year and a half to number one, unpack the junk,
Right.
and that way I didn't have to continue to carry it around and know it's going to come out some other time. But I also doubled down on building confidence around trusting myself.
Right.
I think that's a really important piece to get to is learning to trust yourself.
Right.
And if we show up and we do the things we say we're going to do, we're honoring our word to ourselves, but we're honoring our word to others as well. And so that is an area that I've made a lot of leaps and bounds of progress in.
Amazing.
And it's one of those things that I'm really proud of over the last year and a half is my growth in that area of decisiveness.
I love that. So that's been coincidentally, a focal point for me since the beginning of 2025. One of the things that I do with leadership teams and individual leaders is I have individual leaders create their personal trust value system. So looking at where I am as a leader, how has trust been eroded in terms of my leadership style, and like what are the 3 or 4 values I want to work on, and how am I going to work on that over the next year? And so I also like to practice what I preach. So if I'm teaching someone to do it, I also want to know that it works. And so I don't just throw things out there. So my personal trust value system last year was decisiveness, agility, and listening, like in terms of how I wanted to show up as a more trustworthy leader. And, reviewed that kind of on a quarterly basis. How do I think I'm doing? Asking my chief of staff, how do you think I'm doing? But yeah, right there with you. And also, again, that self trust
Right.
that comes with
Yeah.
decisiveness. Okay, so we talk a lot about perfectionism and trust, and that's kind of a focal point for this leadership series. So if you think about your past or even just current day, how do you think perfectionism shows up for you? Let's talk about current, because I don't think perfectionism ever really goes away entirely. I just think we turn the volume down on it. Um,
Sure.
let's talk about, sorry, how perfectionism showed up for you in the past
Yeah.
and how it kind of held you back, and then maybe how it still kind of shows up for you today.
Yeah. Definitely my first steps into leadership. Oh gosh, it was riddled. And I don't even know that I knew it in the moment.
Yeah.
It was kind of covered by other emotions, but that's really what it came down to. And it was stepping into a new leadership role and
Mhm.
feeling absolutely unworthy of being there. I did not deserve to be at this table. And I can distinctly close my eyes and remember my very first management meeting. And I sat there, at this big kid table is what it felt like. And I was waiting for someone to stand up and be like, what is she doing here?
Right.
I mean, I felt that viscerally, I felt that as I
Right.
sat around that table. And that would accompany me for a number of years along
Yeah.
the way of when I made a mistake, I didn't want anyone to know about it. And
Right.
so, how do I hide this mistake? How do I make sure that I'm presenting optically in a way where I look like I've got it all together? I think that starts to weave itself in both personally and professionally,
Yeah.
right? Because there is this persona that you want to show up as. And so I made mistakes. I um, got to a point finally. I led like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
It was awful. I mean, I think back, like I'm mortified by some of the people that I led early on as I
Oh my
think
gosh,
about
me too.
from then today. I used to get so aggravated when people would send a long email, so much so that when I was managing a team, they put up on my door, be brief, be bold, be gone.
Okay.
And I'm like, and I took pride in the fact that that was on my door.
Right.
And I made decisions like I knew the best for everyone.
Right.
And I didn't ask anyone else what they wanted. And so I just really kind of trampled over people. And yet didn't have the experience to do that. And it
Yeah.
was all in the spirit of actually wanting to show up
Right.
in the light of a leader, of what I thought a leader was. And that would then lead me on to the next promotion. And I got promoted a lot, and that
Yeah.
became a status tool for me. It was
Mhm.
title and it was status. And what I really missed along the way was um, this kind of malnourished sense of ego that was being created.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the things to be egotistical about, but it was really when those things became important that started forming this high sense of self, self-orientation. And once I made a couple of trip ups where um, I had to be really humbled.
Right.
And I don't think people saw me outwardly as like this egotistical person
Yeah.
but I knew that, like I knew why I wanted to get to that next position. I knew kind of the why underneath as to why. And so I had to get really humbled. And I had some great lessons. And I think it wasn't until that happened. Again, as we talked about, like I've always said, God doesn't just say, hey, here's your sign, Sonny, like you asked.
Right.
a sign as to which direction I should go, he usually has to hit me over the head with it
Right.
for me to really get it. And so got really humbled and then thought, you know what, there's got to be a different way to do this. And it was actually why I started my podcast, was because
Okay.
I thought, gosh, so early, I had so many lessons that I don't share with people.
Right.
And why not? If someone would share all of their lessons with me, I could vicariously step over a lot of potholes because
Yeah.
of their lived experiences. And so, how can I give back? How can I create a platform
Yeah.
where other people can benefit from that? And so that kind of led me
Yeah.
into where I am today. Perfectionism today, I think I've done a lot of work
Mhm.
around undoing and unlearning some of
Yeah.
that stuff. But I think it still does, right? Like I'm in a first-time CEO position.
Right.
And so sometimes the light is shined on me and it's like, okay, I have to present in this certain way. And so I have to like actively call myself out in the moment.
Right.
I think it was Brendan Burchard who taught something along the way where, and it was like just grabbing a hold of whatever you're habitually trying to kind of like unbreak that habit and do something, whether it's, clap your hands, you have to stop yourself in the moment
Right.
where your brain can detach from your habit and go back to logic and say, oh, wait, you're actively calling this out, Sonny. So let's pause that back a little bit and proceed forward how you really want to show up. And I've gotten really good at that.
Yeah.
But that's not without like putting in the reps of feeling very clunky and, being worried about how you show up.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever really get over that.
Yeah.
I think we learn to grow in a place where we trust ourselves more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we just learn to turn the volume down.
That's
Not
right.
to
That's
pop
a
up, and
great way.
it doesn't run our lives like where it may have consumed this much of our mental space. We get to a space where it's consuming this much.
Yeah.
And so there's three kind of ways that I define perfectionism just based on my experience. And the first is like perfectionism is doing things for love instead of from love. And then perfectionism is hustling for our self-worth. So that's, I feel the pain. It's like, oh, I need the next
Yes.
promotion. I got to work, work, work. And then the final is like when we're outsourcing our self-worth and our intuition and our self-trust and our decision making. And so I think that's how it can show up in terms of like if we struggle with decision making, it's because we've outsourced it, or maybe we don't even know what our intuition is saying. There's a quote that I heard a few months ago, and it's been pretty impactful for me. And it was something along the lines of intuition speaks, fear and anxiety question.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so I'm like, oh, it's just such an easy way to kind of delineate between is this my intuition speaking or is it my anxiety and fear? And so anyway, I think that those two things can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. The discernment around those
Yeah.
two can really get you in a place where you can start to turn the volume up on your intuition and down on everything
Yep.
else.
Right. Right. And I think early on for me too, it was hard for me to receive feedback because anything that was less than perfect about me, I had a hard time seeing. There'd be so much shame. So even
Yeah.
being able to grow. So in terms of trust, um, you've talked about it being important and a really important leadership skill. So talk more about that. Like, why do you think trust is so important?
Yeah. I think anything you want to achieve, from my perspective today, a lot of what I do is about casting this vision.
Yeah.
And it's not about showing people like that it's already done today, because vision is a lot about creating something that doesn't even exist. And so, in order to do that, like you have to accomplish anything big and bold, you have to have people alongside you
Right.
willing to be bought in to a thing that doesn't even yet exist.
Right.
And so, that is a huge challenge. But I think if you are establishing that there's like a trust equation that I go over a lot with my team, and especially when
Okay.
new team members join, and it talks about, doing what you say you're going to do,
Mhm.
showing up when you're supposed to be showing up. And it refers to intimacy, but I always say people get weird with that word, but
I know.
it's about connection, right?
Yeah.
Are you doing what you say you're going to do? Do you have a connection with someone? And then the bottom of that equation is self-orientation.
Okay.
And in order to achieve all of that, you have to have a low self-orientation, because you have to not feel like you're the person driving everything, pulling all the levers. And so you really do, like, internally, you have to have a lower sense of self-orientation. And that is just, again, like turning that ego piece
Yeah.
down a little bit. Are you showing up for you and how you want to be seen, or are you showing up in pursuit of what you're trying to create as a team? And so I
Yeah.
think that's really important to reflect upon, is how are you doing in each of those areas? Because that's what lays the foundation of trust.
Right.
And through trust, as I mentioned earlier, and trust isn't like pretty and perfect all the time. Trust, it can be clunky because sometimes you trip up, sometimes you don't do what you say you were going to do, or sometimes there isn't as much of a connection. If you're not identifying those things and intentionally working on those with each individual, because there's not just like one model, you got people that you're leading and people that you're building trust with. Each of
Right.
those people are very, very different based on their lived experience. So you
Right.
have to fine tune all of that individually for your team and for
Right.
those you want to lead. And I think by doing that, you establish this foundation of trust where they're like, all right, I can go to war with you. You
Right.
have my back, I have your back. And that's how you create this big, bold thing that
Right.
doesn't even exist. Like that's I always try to tell leaders, your vision is something that life hasn't even been breathed into yet.
Right.
It is
Right.
something that you could be a snake oil
Yeah.
salesman because you're just saying, hey, like this can exist. And if
Right.
you have done a really good job and you've built trust on a team, they will lock arms with you and they're like, great. When? How do we go? Let's do this. Let's make this happen. And
Yeah.
so I think, for so many things, so it's not just that the vision piece of business, but it's also when things go wrong, when they get a diagnosis, are they telling you about it because they trust you?
Right.
Are they sharing when things are not going smooth in life? And if they aren't, you should probably look at that fine tuning of some of the elements in that equation because you want to be able to be that person that where trust is established, just in all areas.
Right. Yeah. How do you think low trust impacts performance?
Oh, low trust. So you can have a big vision, right? But
Yeah.
you're likely not going to have a team who is completely on board and enrolled in accomplishing that vision together,
Right.
right? You may have someone who I don't think you have like when I think about what a trusting team accomplishes, I think about debate. And I think
Hmm.
about a healthy sense of a debate or dialogue. I think of pushing back. And so, what happens when you don't have that? What's the opposite of that? You
Right.
have folks who aren't having healthy debate. They're just nodding their head when you say what to do. They're not challenging one another. They're probably not working as hard for you or in service of the vision either. And so there's a lot of things where it starts to erode and the bottom starts to fall out when you don't have those pieces. Because again, like truly, if you think about the floor of something, when you don't have that foundation,
Right.
things just start to crumble. And
Right.
so that's very, very similar. You have a divided, you have a sense of dividedness, not unity. And I
Right.
think a team who has trust, you can navigate almost anything. You can navigate the fluctuations of business.
Right.
Things aren't always up and to the right, right? You can pull levers together.
Right.
You can navigate those diagnoses that somebody's going to get. And you can do it with a sense of arms wrapped around each other.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know like I love that you can connect all the dots. It's interesting as I talk to leaders, like everyone says trust is important, but like they struggle to connect it to performance or the profitability or the bottom line. And I'm a big believer that trust informs performance and performance informs profitability. And I also think that change management is really trust management, right? AI adoption is really trust adoption. In fact, if you're not focusing on trust at the same time you're going through any sort of reorg change, AI integration, whatever it is, like it will fail.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the decisiveness piece too, right? Uh, if your team does not trust you in a time of high pressure or crisis to make a decision, because we can't wait around. It would be really, really nice to wait around and kind of collaborate and see what everybody's thoughts are and gather everyone's input.
Right.
That would be really great in a time that's not high pressure or crises. But sometimes you have to just execute on a quick decision that may have a lot of unintended consequences. You have to
Right.
evaluate those and you have to do it in a really, really short period of time.
Right.
And if you don't have the trust of your team to be able to say, you know what, we make the decision you need to make and we got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think all of those things then lead themselves to, you mentioned productivity and
Yeah.
profitability. When you don't have the foundation of all of those things, number one, you don't have culture because you
Right.
have low employee satisfaction. Nobody feels like
Right.
they're a part of a team. They don't
Yeah.
feel inclusive of that environment that people
Right.
so desperately want to be a part of. So they're not showing up super productive. They're not doing really, really hard work. They're probably kind of half checked out or looking for another job. It's that like quiet quitting or
Yeah.
uh, that we've all experienced those things. And so, and then what does that lead to? Like
Right.
everything leads up to kind of that financial pillar, if you will. And if you don't have these ones right, like the last couple around productivity and satisfaction and profitability, they're going to crumble too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really powerful. So it's been interesting to see who is able to connect the dots and who isn't. But I think it is the most important thing. And right now, more than ever,
Right.
trust is the most critical component of success in a healthy culture.
Right.
Um, okay, so we talked a lot about trust and perfectionism and your leadership style. What's one piece of advice you would give to aspiring leaders now?
Hmm. I would say lean in to mentors early.
Yeah,
Lean into the idea of mentorship. Being a mentee, that doesn't mean you have to formally go ask somebody, hey, will you mentor me because we're in the same industry or you're in a role that, I mean, look at both of us. Look at our bookshelves.
right,
All these people have been our mentors.
right.
The access to information. I mean, what a time to be alive, right?
Yeah,
The number of podcasts that I consume on a day-to-day basis, the number of books that I read, the number of people that I reach out to, all of those, there's so much access. So lean into like consuming all that you can. You get to hear life experiences of other people. You get to hear where people went really wrong. You get to hear how people navigated becoming way more decisive than they'd ever
right.
been. You get to experience that with other people while listening to their story or learning their story. And so I think that was the piece. It's probably only been 12 or 13 years since I really started leaning into kind of that sort of self-development kind of genre in general. Like I listened to my very first podcast probably 13 years ago,
Okay.
and all of a sudden my eyes were like open to the world of holy cow, I can get all this information. That was before podcasting was overly
I
popular.
know.
And then I thought, well, most of the people that I was listening to talked about reading. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to become a voracious reader.
Yeah,
And all of those things, like, gosh, I think about the number of people that I have been mentored by, and never did I sit side to side with them.
right,
But boy, I sure benefited from them. And so lean into that, open up the world of
right.
what you know or what you think you know, and not just the things that you think you want to focus on. Like I love navigating really diverse topics
Yeah,
and reading about differing of opinions, and I'm just hungry mentally. I feel like I'm an eternal student when it comes to that. And so
yeah,
that's what I would encourage people to do is really lean into that side of things.
yeah. Um, so aside from your podcast, which everyone listening, Sunny's podcast is Evoke Greatness. So most definitely check it out. But what are some of your other, like, what's your favorite books and podcasts right now?
Yeah, right now, I love Tom Bilyeu. So Tom
Okay.
Bilyeu was the
Yep.
founder of Quest. It's interesting. He and I have navigated many journeys together as he, again, like it's this access to people, right?
Yeah.
From his days of building Quest, which is a nutritional bar and the company that probably a lot of us consume a lot of their products today,
Mhm.
to selling that and navigating into like his own kind of personal development. And so he's a little bit more political now, but it's such an educated way to look at politics. Like he deep
Yeah.
dives everything and he doesn't have like present one side or the other. He presents both. And so
Mhm.
it has me really mentally stimulated from a political perspective and kind of hot things going on in the world. Another one is Gary Brecka, who
Okay.
is a human biologist, and
Oh,
his podcast is The Ultimate Human
okay.
and all about biohacking. Again, like those are probably my top two that I
Okay.
really like to consume regularly. And then A CEO for All Seasons. It's a McKinsey
Yep.
book. Absolutely love that. I'm in kind of my initial season.
Yeah.
Uh, and it has just in kind of reading and navigating that, I'm going to do a CEO series, which I'd love to have
Oh,
you on,
I love that.
around like just all of those. What comes with the first season of being a CEO? I think I was really hungry, like I was looking for books, and there's not much out there. There's not many podcasts out there, and so I want to create a series with some really phenomenal CEOs to kind of share the different sides of what we
Yeah.
first encountered, what we stepped in. And then the other one is this book here, Worthy.
Worthy.
I will tell you, until friends, you do the work on you, um, you will stay stagnant and you
Right.
will stay with that baggage of junk
Yeah.
of all the things that happened to you prior. And you deserve better than that. And
Right.
so if you do that self work to really unpack that, I promise you there is so much more of an amazing world out there waiting for you.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great spot to end. Sonny, thank you so much. You're amazing. And gosh, I'm sure all the leaders that are working alongside you, what a powerful leader to work with you. So thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait for all of our listeners to experience you. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.